Hey, I'm gonna say some stuff, and these opinions are not of my future self, unless I'm right. So these thoughts are free from my future self, unless I'm right about my thoughts. One, I think World Labs is pivoting away from world models and more towards robot foundation models. Some people may say those are the same just for the sake of this video. They're different stuff. And that is to say, I think World Labs is pivoting away from consumers, not consumer, but more so away from entertainment and gaming and towards just robotic applications, which makes sense because you can look at stuff like recently from the media they've been putting out, from the interviews with Feifei Lee to the blog post to their recent acquisition with CNX, and they've made this publicly clear that their focus now is more so on robot foundation models because these are things that these are things that make immediate sense when you think of spatial intelligence. Because when you think of spatial intelligence, you want to think about a machine model, a machine embodying a physical space and trying to operate with it with some intelligence. I think that's amazing. I think that's really awesome. The reason I care though is that their startup was what actually kind of inspired Star Labs, the startup I'm running right now, to more so pursue world models from the idea of using physics and Butte Gaussians as a substrate for an explicit geometry world model. I'm not going to get all into all that, but the reason it concerns me though is because like what did they see that they left more so that path and more so focused on more so focused on robot foundation models. And largely the way I see it is for a couple of reasons. This is just a broader industry trend, but I do think the immediate application is robotics, right? I think there's obviously going to be cool stuff that happens in entertainment in terms of graphics, but when you think about the most commercially viable thing, and just the most interesting thing, and most interesting in quotations, it's just robotics, right? You can think about like I don't know who said this, if it was Jensen or some other prominent figure, but you can think about like the energy demands of the United States of America alone, right? That build out, it's clear it can't be done by humans alone. So how do you scale that up? And that's something where robots, humanoids, not humanoids, but like other robotic forms of intelligence, largely does matter, right? And this is why you can see people like World Labs. That's why you can see people like I think it's applied physics. You can see people like even AMI. I think their first immediate application is in the robotic space in terms of manufacturing devices. Um, and then now that's why you have stuff like more people are becoming more invested and more interested in stuff like physical AI, because the whole idea of physical AI again is an intelligence embodied in a physical space. I do think though, and just for a third point before actually giving my thoughts, I also think another aspect of this is just the notion of sci-fi, right? The notion of the future to have these artificial life forms that physically share a space with us. I think that's a big reason why so many people are interested in it. I'm personally like I don't say I'm indifferent towards robots. I think they're a very cool thing. I think it's not my most exciting thing. Um, but then in that same breath, I also do think I won't say it's short-sighted, but I don't think robots are a path towards world models. And just to be very clear, world models are in architecture, like large language models. They're more so like a term like AGI, which can just mean like it's a broad goal that you try and use as your north star when you're building something. Um, but I don't think robots are a path towards world models, largely because the way robots work, and from all the stuff I've seen in my short lifespan, has just been much more task focused, right? Whereas with a world model, you really want to understand the underlying physics. And I think there's many good analogies, I think, for now, that that I think really explains this idea. I think one is like i i if you had a model that could fully represent the world, fully simulate the world, let's say like rain falling on grass and wind blowing the tree and all those things and fully generalizes, I think that model is much more close to a world model that understands physics than a model that can go and touch the grass or uh or uh or point to the direction the wind is flowing, right? I think it really becomes a difference between the way we view tasks and the way we view understanding, right? Like a really good example I just came up with is I'm doing some studying for my CMSC 351 class, and there's this I think it's sum of squares, and to like a shortcut is like you just divide it by six. I have no reason. I don't understand why you divide it by six, right? But then I just know to get this done, I quickly divide it by six, and that's a very task-oriented mentality, and it's something that where I can do those questions really really well, but the underlying mechanisms, the underlying understanding is just not there, such that I can't really innovate on it. If you said, Dal, you're the last person on earth, and if you don't innovate on this formula, we're all just screwed. I couldn't really do much, right? It's just like whoopsie doopsie. Um, even the way like we operate as human beings, like there's a lot of stuff I do that task oriented. Like I think it's like a game almost. Like there's combos you just naturally do that you know it's going to help you achieve some goal. Like for myself, I know how to take off my shirt because it's just like this, or I know how to pick up something. Right, those are tasks. But in terms of how I know something will work, or how I know I'm more likely to achieve something, whether it's walking a certain way, or whether it's um just make it maneuvering instinctively, those are much more likely less to be rules that I've seen before, and much more likely to be my understanding of the underlying mechanisms that operate reality. Right. I think that's why I'm so curious as to why there's so much push for physical AI, not really um in terms of understanding physics. Right. I saw a post on Twitter right now, which is more so like the North Star spatial intelligence of robotics. And that's why I still feel like that's so short-sighted, because like if you really understand spatial intelligence, right? If you have a model that can really understand spatial intelligence, it's no longer robots you get. Like that's a clear, quick, and amazing application where you get stuff where it's like you're building new forms of technology, right? You have a model that can do that. Right off the bat, that almost feels like magic. I know I've said this many times where large language models in themselves and in their own right feel like magic in a digital space, even though they can have physical applications. But I think once you have that in terms of the physical world, you replicate that same magical feeling you get when you use like something like ChatGPT 5.6. So I know that's gonna feel dated in like maybe a year or two into the physical one. That's a scary but very exciting thing to imagine. I don't think robots really scratch that itch or really make me think we get that, right? I think you get a very valuable capital, like you get more workers and you get all those cool amazing things. I guess you can use them in Disney World for cool entertainment purposes, but in terms of really breaking away and understanding the underlying reality mechanisms of the world, I don't think you get that. And that's why I think maybe counterintuitively, the gaming and entertainment route is much more likely to lead to robots. I think this goes to the beast I think where it's like I don't usually work with robotics, and maybe that's why. But I do think, and this is another time I'm going to give a caveat or explain a point against myself. But I do think when you try and simulate the world, you're much more closer to understanding like some level of causality in the world. The caveat to that though is that in gaming entertainment, there's a lot of cheat codes, right? So it's not like you can't even think of just clamping stuff. Like there's like even working with the whole Gaussian flex paper, which is basically just using physics and big Gaussians to do stuff like thermodynamics. There's a lot of cheat codes you could employ and all that, and those cheat codes are not how reality work, right? Maybe no, they're not how reality work, right? So you don't really, it's not a one-to-one thing. So it's like I don't know. It's like it's give and take. But I do think I if I was to bet my money, if I was to have a thesis that went against the whole research world, I would say it's much more likely to get a world model from having a model that really simulates its own reality, right? Than having an embodied intelligence. Um, which I guess is something I guess it makes Star Labs more valuable. I do think it is a good point of concern to think why are more people going towards physical AI? Maybe it's just like because they've been working with Gaussian Splat, so they've been working with Gaussian Splat for a long time now, longer than I have known of them. So like I obviously should also look into that and get their understanding and the underlying mechanisms, the underlying mechanisms that led to that. But I do think it's a conviction, it's a thesis that I'm willing to bet the whole of Star Labs on, and hopefully, not even hopefully, when it pays off, there'll be a there'll be a very exciting moment because then you have magic in the physical world. Besides that, though, I have nothing else to say. So have a great day.